And we go back to the province of KwaZulu-Natal, where ActionSA has announced 3 mayoral candidates in KwaZulu-Natal. The party unveiled its candidates for eThekwini, KwaDukuza and Newcastle, with President Herman Mashaba in the KwaZulu-Natal leadership leading that announcement. The move comes as parties begin positioning themselves for key municipal contests across the province. Now we cross live to SABC News reporter Ayanda Mhlongo, who is at the KwaMashu Christian Centre north of Durban. Thank you very much, and give us a sense of who those candidates were in essence, because I suppose that's the reason why the leadership of ActionSA is in KwaZulu-Natal today.
Absolutely, Tabis. A very good afternoon to you and good afternoon to our viewers. Important day for ActionSA here in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, marking a milestone for the party as it intensifies its campaign ahead of the local government elections. And of course, today the supporters and leaders of ActionSA were waiting to find out who the party had decided as their mayoral candidates in 3 key municipalities. So in eThekwini, Mhlongo will stand as the mayoral candidate for the party. In neighboring KwaDukuza, we have Halalisani Mhlongo, and all the way in the KwaZulu-Natal Midlands, the party has decided to field Nqumalo as the mayoral candidate in the Newcastle municipality. Of course, ActionSA President Herman Mashaba speaking about the role that these 3 leaders will have to play in their respective municipalities, saying that theirs is to serve the municipalities, considering some of the challenges that have been identified in these key municipalities. ActionSA is looking at increasing its, growing its support base in these 3 areas. In the 2021 local government elections, if we look back at the results there, they were able to garner over 46,000 votes, and predominantly in these 3 areas, securing them 12 seats. And this time around, the party is looking at not only consolidating its support, but also growing in these 3 areas. Without wasting much time, let me now bring in Halalisani Mhlongo, who will be standing as the mayoral candidate for ActionSA in KwaDukuza. Mr. Mhlongo, thank you so much for your time. I can imagine it's not going to be an easy election, and I'm just looking at KwaDukuza, a very key municipality, neighbors eThekwini. We're seeing so much development and potential in KwaDukuza, but unfortunately we've also seen the decay around that particular municipality. It's going to be a tight race. A number of political parties have set their sights on KwaDukuza, but you're the man that ActionSA has entrusted to lead the party and to stand for the party. Let's firstly start on what will be your key areas that you want to focus on, particularly in your area.
Thank you. The first thing we need to do is we want to focus on reinstating the belief within the community which the local government can work for them, because as you've said, KwaDukuza has so much potential, but unfortunately as a result of mismanagement, we found ourselves in a situation where abantu no longer believe in the municipality's ability to deliver quality services. So that's the first thing that we'd like to work on, is to deliver quality services to the residents of KwaDukuza. And how are we going to ensure that? By holding officials accountable. Because some of the issues that we've got KwaDukuza is not that there aren't bylaws to enforce, but there's no political will to enforce these bylaws. So for that to happen, you're going to need ethical leadership to come into office, look at the bylaws that we have at our disposal and say, we're going to crack down in areas where there's non-compliance. So for example, I'll give you one issue that's one of the biggest in KwaDukuza, which is energy losses. Within this quarter alone, we've got over 400 million in energy losses. Now that shows you that we've got a huge issue. Now how do we begin to change the trajectory of what's happening in KwaDukuza in the form of energy losses? The problem is that the problem is mostly centered around black communities or disadvantaged communities in the form of illegal connections, and that's where the main focus of officials is. But they're letting large power users get away scot-free. So we're saying under our government, we want to look into large power users, as we've seen Unasipi Moya do in Tshwane, where she's gone around and she's really ensured the enforcement of bylaws by checking who's compliant, who's not. If you're not paying us, we're cutting you off. So we need strict and strong leadership that is going to go out and be decisive. The time for sitting in offices and giving speeches is over. The time for leaders to be out on the streets is now. Ngifuna mina to wear overalls and go out and be told, Uguti, here's a large power user that owes us millions, and they are not paying us, and then we cut them off so that we can start recovering those funds. These are some of the issues that we are facing.
I just want to quickly also bring in another issue. It's also impacting on residents in eThekwini, by extension KwaDukuza as well as water. That it also has been a major challenge. You've got areas, parts of KwaDukuza that are really growing, bringing in the investment that we've been seeking. But how are you going to address very quickly the water challenges?
What's sad about KwaDukuza is that there are areas experiencing water challenges within a growing population, but there are areas that have never had water to begin with. I'll give an example of Ward 21 at Fontaine. People are still drinking from water that is being left out for animals, for boreholes that have been man-made. So it shows you, Guti, this scarce life expectancy in terms of water is not being fulfilled within Umkhandlu. And we must be honest with each other, district models are no longer doing the work that they need to do. They are crumbling because we've introduced elements of criminality. And that's what happens when you rely on service providers within a tender system. We must take back some of these competencies back within municipalities so that we're not being over-reliant on service providers, because what we do when we do that is that we create a conducive environment for the exploitation of the tender system. And that's why you'll find, in situations where the municipality is quite competent to supply water, they are not, because the water tanker mafia is reliant on the failing infrastructure to continue to dilapidate. So, Tina, we've always been very clear in fighting for the rights of communities KwaDukuza for water. For example, we did draw up a petition, this is a water petition, where we're trying to say save Caesar Water, because it was now going to be taken over, competency amanzi, by LMB for some of the areas and concession areas that had been catered for by Caesar Water. So we realized they do not have, they don't have the capacity to service our communities. So we had to stand up as ActionSA and say we're going to fight for the agreement for Caesar Water to be reinstated so that one bag to get water.
All right, Halalisani Mhlongo, thank you so much. I wish we could continue to speak to you, but obviously as the campaigns are now essentially intensifying, we'll be catching up with them throughout as they head now to their different constituencies and communities to campaign for ActionSA. I'm going to leave it here at Tawis and hand things back to you in studio.